Hi, Tom. Good morning. Is it good for you in the morning? How's it?
Morning. It's good for me. It's better than because I go out every night, so that makes it difficult. So I'm always around in the morning. Usually not as presentable at 8:30 in the morning, but I have no reason to get up early anymore. No more 6 a.m. run into the office.
You go out every evening? Tell me more.
It's just I get to work from my home now, and I'm not working for the company. I'm working for research projects, things like what happened over in Dubai, those kind of things, special projects.
Awesome. I'm really excited about your book. The book holds amazing significance in relation to your family's journey in the world of lab-grown gemstones. And your father was the first commercial producer. So let's start with the inspiration behind the title, The Chatham Legacy, an American Story.
I've had this book in my head for the last 30 years. Many people have suggested or begged me to write a book because our family has been through so much. My father, of course, is the recognized pioneer in the development of an emerald process. We weren't the first in the world, but he was the first commercial producer. People back in the mid 1800s had grown, laboratory curiosities of emerald, but they had no commercial value. And the book covers 3 generations, which is a little unusual.
I think even before teenage, your father fell in love with chemistry. Tell us more about that accidental discovery he had and the eureka moment he had.
Because my father is obviously the key point of the emerald creation, but my grandfather, who was born in 1862, and then had my father when he was 50, makes us go way back in only 3 generations. But Carroll Chatham had a passion for chemistry from a very young age. His father was in the lumber business, had nothing to do with chemistry. But his 4th son, the youngest out of the 4, it was from 12 years of age on, just anything chemistry, and not gemstones, but experimenting with different things and just constantly researching and playing with chemistry. And of course, he excelled at school, in high school, and also went to Caltech, a very advanced technical college here in the U.S. But even before that, going to college and getting a formal education in chemistry, which he did, he was growing emerald on a very small basis in his father's cellar. And he thought this was going to be a 1-week, 2-week project, and it turned into his life's work. But it just kept getting longer and longer, and he'd go off to school, and the Caltech campus was about 500 miles away, so he lived down there, but he would come home for breaks. And on those breaks, he would set up his furnace and try and grow emerald. One day, his father saw a light bulb on in my father's laboratory and turned the switch off. Well, this was an indicator to my father that the furnace was still running. And when my grandfather turned the power off, he shut down that furnace. And when my father came home from his break and saw that the furnace was cold, he thought, oh, well, it failed, which is a common problem. The crucibles leak and eats up the element. And he broke open the furnace, thinking he would find, nothing but disaster. But what he found was emerald inside the crucible. It took him 3 years to figure out why the emerald grew. And it seems obvious today when you know something about crystal growth, but that turning off the power and very slowly cooling with all the right ingredients in the solution, you get a slow participation of the main elements of emerald, which he had. Obviously, it was well known, and it took him a while to figure out you need a temperature gradient to grow crystals. And it doesn't matter what kind of crystals you're trying to grow, whether it be sugar crystals, emerald, diamonds, or what have you. You have to have a hot area and a cool area. And not significantly, 1 degree, 2 degrees. And that's what makes the crystals grow. From that, when he finally figured that out, and it seems so stupid and obvious, but there's a lot of things that are easy once you know how. And after he discovered that, he never ever had another failure. The crystals weren't very large. The crucible they were growing in was very small, but that got bigger and bigger and bigger. The war interrupted his work for a while. He worked for a food company, a Del Monte canning company, and that was his effort during the war, rather than be in the military, because they were researching how to preserve food, and that was a big deal, especially during the war, because the troops needed food and there was no way to preserve them, so it was a problem. That's not part of his background. That's organic chemistry, but that's where he had to stay. And in 1945, when the war was over, I was born, and he opened his first lab because he was released from his obligation, and the war was over, and things went on from there. That's what's in the book. I mean, how he struggled growing up to create the emerald, what happened when he tried to sell this emerald into the industry. He was not warmly greeted. People didn't trust him. They didn't believe him that he could do this. And he wanted to run his business honestly. He could have sold the emerald as natural for a long time, and it would just have a little different characteristics. We'd just call it a new mine or something. He didn't want to do that. He was very outspoken about truthfully disclosing everything we did. I mean, not how to make the stone, but what it was.
Tell us about the help you've offered to the GIA and other major labs.
And we tried to help the GIA and gave them a lot of stones. And most of the major labs we've given stones to, so they can research them and look at the consistent indications of origin as you can most any crystal. If you see enough of them from one mine, there's usually there's an indication by what's inside the stone that will tell you where it was born. And the same holds true for laboratory grown gemstones, whether it be diamond, emerald, ruby, sapphire, what have you. They're all unique, but they do have to be studied and categorized, and you look for consistency, and it won't be in every stone, but if you get enough stones, you'll learn. So he struggled with not growing emerald so much in the 40s and 50s. He struggled with marketing, which he wasn't really very good at. I mean, he was definitely one of these mad scientist type, always into chemistry, and he didn't know much about marketing. He slowly, because of the uniqueness of its discovery, got a lot of publicity.
Your father fought the FTC for 4 years, and you won. To an extent, would you say that this win was crucial for the crystal growers?
I mean, hundreds of newspaper articles, magazines, television exposure that we didn't have to pay for, and that helped considerably. Getting the word out about what this Chatham emerald was. Got the word out so well that the natural industry pulled some strings and got the Federal Trade Commission on our back, and we fought them 4 years in Washington, D.C., and we won. But without that win, today, all the crystal growers would have to call their stones synthetic, and we will not use that word. It's confusing. Never mind what the GIA and gemologists say a synthetic stone is. You talk synthetic to a consumer and they think fake. That's all they think. So it was a fight my father couldn't ignore. I mean, he had the option. He could just sign off and, okay, I won't call my stones cultured anymore. I won't call them created. But he didn't want to do that, and he fought it, and it cost a lot of money, and 4 years of his time, a lot of sales, everything stopped. 1959 through 63. And I was not in the business then. I had no idea this was going on. I was 16 at the time, living in Santa Cruz, surfing, going to school, had no idea what my father went through. But it was tough. But we won. And that's what set the precedent. And that's what we use today, the Chatham created emerald. Some of the industry was still, they definitely were not happy with our winning this fight. But over the years, people have become more and more agreeable to this. We don't put down natural emerald or ruby, and those industries that were afraid, those sellers of natural emerald, ruby, sapphire, they haven't been hurt at all. The product has never been pricier in the natural. We've created a different niche for our product, and we do certain things that the natural industry won't do. And we're up against that now with the diamond, trying to do things they won't do. And that will be the direction of success, I call it, that will make the created diamond successful, even more successful in the long run. But the book covers this and all of my struggles.
You joined the company in 1965. Walk us through those times and your love for marketing.
Well, I joined the company in 1965, 58 years ago. Worked with my father in the labs, and we together discovered how to make a flux-grown ruby, which is identical to the natural. And then we went into all the colors of sapphire, alexandrite. He always wanted to make diamond, but he was never able to do that. And unfortunately, he passed away at a pretty young age, at 68, in 1983. I continued his work, of course, and my brother joined me also in the laboratory. We got into the marketing. That's what I really excelled at versus chemistry. My father was so bright, and all the time I spent in college studying chemistry and math were really a waste of time. I should have been into marketing instead of chemistry, because even when I got out of school, no way was I anywhere near as good as my father was. And I couldn't even pretend it. So I just gravitated toward marketing. We were selling products all over the world through different people. We had no idea where the product was, how it was sold, and I thought that was the wrong way to go. And we slowly but surely took over everything to do with Chatham, the cutting of the stones, the jewelry manufacturing, and we've got 300 people in China cutting stones, all different types, diamond included, and also making jewelry. We strictly wholesale, totally vertically integrated. So that's what's in the book. I mean, it's a lifelong, story about the struggles, the determination, the roadblocks that were put up in front of us, life in general, and what you go through, and it gives us credit for growing emerald, which we rightly deserve, but that doesn't make it successful, as some people, other growers, are finding out today with, let's say, diamond. Just because you can make a diamond now doesn't mean you're going to be successful. There's a lot more goes into it. It takes a passion. You have to have a passion for the product, and there's certain things you shouldn't do. That's what I spoke about in Dubai in my talk. Never mind wrap and his prices, and never mind greenwashing products. The FTC here doesn't care for that, and you can't back it up. That's why they don't care for it. So just forget about it. Pricing is not a marketing tool, in my opinion. Just part of the cost of the product. You have to make a reason for your product to be successful, a reason for it to be better than the next guy. Create demand through cutting and maybe jewelry, and what you can do, and what other people won't do. Try and find a little niche, and that's what its success will be in diamond.
Could you share some specific anecdotes or stories that you've not shared so far in your interviews? Something to maybe intrigue the readers?
Well, I've shared a lot in the book. As a matter of fact, my father would not be happy if he read the book, should he be alive today, because there's a lot of things that I expose in the book that we would not talk about. I mean, just the construction of the furnace that we invented. I don't mention the chemicals we use. That's still a secret process. I don't have any one thing that I can share with you that would, I've lived this so long. And that's why I put it, down in paper. It took me only about 40 days to write the book, but it took a year and a quarter to edit the book because my editor, someone who used to work at the GIA on gems and gemology, they knew the gemstone industry. They knew all the words and what have you. So I didn't have to teach them that. And they knew all about Chatham. When you're writing something from memory, you sometimes think you're saying something that you're very aware of, and the reader is not, because they aren't inside your head. So the editor would constantly say, Tom, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. You have to fill this in. You have to explain this, in greater detail for the reader to be able to understand your message. But as far as anecdotes, I don't really have any that I can think of that I haven't already, that are in the book. When you write a book and you go through the editing process, you actually get so tired of reading the same thing again and again and again. I'm actually rereading the book right now after having not read it for 2 months, just to see, if I made any mistakes, and I haven't found any mistakes yet. The people that have read it, they love it and they like it. It's an adventure of my life, whether it be trying to grow diamonds, in the Ukraine, which I did, and Russia, and some of the things that I went through during those periods, the Wild West of diamond production, back in the 90s, joining up with Tracy Hall in Provo, Utah, the inventor of diamond for GE. We worked with them for a while, and that was a real pleasure. Meeting Tracy Hall Sr., his 2 sons, both of them PhDs in chemistry and physics, very bright people. Tracy Hall didn't get any of the benefits from his success at General Electric because he worked for General Electric. When you work for somebody and invent something, you don't get to keep it. And some people went after my father, including Caltech, but he was able to prove that he was working on this project before he went to their school. And Del Monte Canning Corporation tried to get part of it, and he proved that he had this prior knowledge, this prior experience, and so they were not successful. Very important. And that didn't, unfortunately, happen with Tracy Hall. I think he got a $25 savings bond for inventing diamond for GE, and he quit. He was very disappointed. He's no longer alive.
In your book, you talk about Tracy Hall. What was his son's response when you sent them your book?
I sent the book to his 2 sons, and they thanked me very much, and they were sorry that our work together, wasn't as successful as we hoped. They were thankful for what I said about them, and writing about their father, of course. But they didn't have the passion for the gemstone creation that I did. They were growing diamonds in Provo, Utah, but it was all for industrial application. So a lot of people know how to grow diamonds for that application, but they aren't interested in the gemstone application. And unless you really want to make gemstones, gemstone quality, size, color, what have you, and work at it, you just won't get it.
You discuss your dad's achievement of successfully growing emeralds in a lab on a commercial basis. And nobody had ever done that before. So could you share your insights on why he was more successful than other chemists and why nobody had ever done that before?
I don't know why my father was more successful than the other chemists. They certainly were on the right track. There was people working on growing emeralds since 1847, and I have some of those crystals, but they're very small and they aren't commercially viable. So it's relatively easy to grow very, very small emerald crystals, but you can't grow them larger. And that's what everybody was bumping into. And fortunately, my father was not aware of these other attempts. He read that it had never been accomplished. And that was his motivation to grow emeralds. I mean, he didn't know what he was doing, but by studying the earth and where gemstones form and how they form, and like geodes, why does a geode form? And there are certain rules, physical setups that have to be present for crystals to grow of any type. And he came to an understanding of this. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't overnight, but he understood the physics of why crystals grow. And for some reason, the other people did not look at it that same way. So, I mean, I can't really answer your question because I never asked him specifically.
One super important life lesson that your father passed on to you.
Did this over many, many years of trial and error, trial and error. One of the things he did learn, and he passed on to me, is that you don't make the same mistake twice. If it doesn't work the first time, don't do it again. And a lot of people do that. And I've worked with people growing diamonds that never get any better because they keep doing the same thing again and again. You will get the same results, like making a cake. If you don't put in all the right ingredients or whatever, it's going to taste the same. Or making wine, another good example. My father taught me, though, don't repeat your mistakes if possible. Make changes. You might be, and it was fun in the laboratory that no one actually pulled rank as far as my idea is better than your idea. We would have many discussions about how to make changes. I mean, we were constantly making changes, and we would take 4 furnaces and do a certain thing to it, whether it be chemical or physical. And then a year later, we would look at the results. And did it improve it? Did it hurt it? Did it make a difference? We were constantly trying to improve the quality. It isn't perfected today, really. And if we tried to perfect the process, and my father once said, he says, if somebody else some big company owned this business, we wouldn't be in business because the product is not finished. It's not all saleable. We get bad crystals with good crystals growing in the same furnace. We don't understand why. And we just put up, like a miner does, hey, this pocket is good, this one's not. And it has a lot to do with temperature and temperature gradients. And in the earth, of course, you have to deal with contaminants. The only advantage we have is we deal with only clean, materials. And we do not add anything that doesn't belong in an emerald, in the case of emerald. So many people have said to me after I give a presentation, why don't we put a dopant in our emerald to make it easier to identify? And I asked them, I said, why don't you make emeralds if you think it's so easy to add a dopant? I said, if it doesn't come in nature in that crystal, we don't put it in. It won't just go in. So you're talking about a whole new research project that there's no benefit for us. You have to learn your gemology. That's what you have to do. And you can separate any stone. Somebody suggested that why don't we put a laser inscription on the girdle, and especially on diamond, because it'd be too easy to do on moissanite, it'd be too easy to do on cubic zirconia. So if you were going to rely on that inscription, may or may not be there, you're not a gemologist, and you're going to get burned. Those kinds of gimmicks, or the black box gimmicks, they're called, they're dangerous because you can separate laboratory-grown gemstones from natural if you know what you're doing. And if you don't know what you're doing, you shouldn't be doing it. I mean, people get burned. It happens in Colombia, it happens in Bangkok, and I'm sure it's happening right now in the diamond industry. And I'm sorry that is happening because it's not good for us as crystal growers. If people are afraid of a product, they don't want to sell it. And we've always tried to be friendly to the trade, help them understand the product, and show them where it fits in and how to identify it.
Could you elaborate on some specific aspects of your family's journey that you feel are essential for the industry professionals to grasp in order to really fully appreciate the development and significance of lab-grown gemstones?
That's a hard question, really. Definitely takes a passion for the industry and the product that you're growing. And if you don't have it, you won't make it. And my competitors, most of them in colored stones, have fallen by the wayside because they didn't have it. They had good products, but they just didn't have a passion for the industry. They weren't into gemology, they were more into chemistry, and that's not enough. Enjoyed the jewelry industry and became very active in it. I enjoyed gemology and I became very good at it. And my employees, I encourage them to take courses in gemology so they can talk intelligently to our customers. I believe you have to totally immerse yourself in the industry you're trying to become a member of. You can't just be somebody selling a product. It just doesn't work. It hasn't worked in our category anyway. And I think we're seeing some of that now in the diamond industry, where people have purchased the know-how, they are producing a product, and they're floundering. And they don't know what to do except lower prices, and that's not the answer. What I have done, not necessarily intentionally, is just constantly trying to help the industry. I mean, like flying to Dubai to give a 20-minute talk. And I didn't get paid for that. I understood the reason they wanted me there. I'm the oldest one in the world that is alive today that started this business, and I thought it was rather selfish of me not going. I turned them down 2 or 3 times, and then I kind of felt bad. I stopped giving talks about 10 years ago, and because there are a lot of work to put together, and I have given maybe thousands of talks and all over the world, and I'd had enough. Come on, I'm 77. When do I get to quit? So here I am on with you. I don't know what else to tell you. It's not something you can teach. I found that out. I can, till I'm blue in the face, I can lecture a competitor like I did in Dubai, and they probably, it didn't pay attention to me or won't pay attention to me, and they think oh yeah, that's interesting, Tom, but we're going to do something different. That's fine. Everybody has to find their own way, but I just know from my own experience that they don't follow my advice, they won't be successful.
All right. What would you like the readers to take away from this book? Your key takeaways or key messages?
So, what do I want the reader to take away from this book? Well, I want them to catch some of the determination exemplified by my father and myself. The love of chemistry and gemology, and what it takes to be successful. Nothing is easy in this world, and if you think it's easy, you will never accomplish it. Nothing comes for nothing, and nothing lasts forever, that kind of thing. It's just a walk through my life, a determination of purpose that's definitely within myself and was in my father, but it's more on the surface with me. I never could read my father, so he was a different man. He was a real chemist, thinking all the time. But I'm a little more, outgoing than he was. And that's what I try and show in my book. It's I don't know, I've never even thought about what you asked, really, what I hope somebody takes away from my book. I just wanted for posterity to write the history from a first-hand point of view, what my father and myself have gone through, some of the challenges we've overcome, and some of the fun we've had, over the years in what we do.
Okay, here's a game. Choose from these. Would you say that this is a chemistry book, gemology book, or an adventure book?
It isn't all. It is not a chemistry book at all, and it's not a gemology book. It is more of an adventure book. Whether I'm on a safari in Africa, or working in Bangkok, or out in the gem fields in Colombia, all of those things that I've done were meaningful to me in some way, and that's what I shared in the book. I got into Colombia. I went down to give a talk, They invited me to talk. And I said, are you crazy? I don't want to go anywhere near Bogota. You know what I do? And this was somebody from Colombia government calling me. And they says, no, we know what you do. We think everybody else should know what you do. And I said, I don't think they want me alive down there. And I was fearful to go. And they said, we promise you security. And you and other people, there's maybe 50 other people coming to give a talk. Bill Boyajian was one of them. And as a thank you for doing this, we're going to take you to the Muzo mine and the Shivor mine, and where the natural emeralds have been mined for thousands of years. And that is not open to the public. I mean, that is strictly off limits. And that is what enticed me to say, I'll go, I'll come. And it was a very scary situation. I mean, when the plane landed, everything was first class. I said, everything's first class, we'll take care of it. Hotel taken care of, everything. So I fly down, land in Bogota, and the pilot says, everyone remains seated except for Tom Chatham. Oh, come forward, please, with your passport. And I went to the front of the plane. They opened the door, and there's two guys with machine guns. And they look at my passport, and they said, come with us. So I go with them. My luggage is already off the plane. I don't go to customs. They put me in an armored car, an armored truck. And I said, well, if they're going to kill me, I guess, they don't really have to use an armored truck. And they took me to the hotel. I didn't have to check in. They took me to my room, and they said, there's a guard in front of your room. Don't leave the room. And that's the way it was for a couple of days. And I was guarded as everyone else was. And going to the mines was a real joy. I'd never been a quarter of a mile down in a hole before. Luckily, I wasn't claustrophobic. Didn't bother me. But it was a real experience. So, I mean, those kinds of things that I've done over my life are in the book.
Wow. Since you went to the mines, which are off public, you're not against the mine industry, right?
Not at all. If it wasn't, and a lot of people think, we're trying to take over the natural industry, and that argument is going on today with the diamond. But if it wasn't for the history and the mystique of the natural gemstone, we would really have no reason to exist. So we don't want to see that industry be hurt in any way. We don't want to see it go away, because we need that notoriety of the natural gemstone that we definitely copy. We're riding on the shirt tails of the natural industry. I agree with that. We don't have any choice. I don't think we should get as close as some of the people do in the diamond industry do today, because now we're throwing rocks at each other, which doesn't help. We don't do that, but some people do, and the opposition does too. I mean, the natural diamond people are scared, as they were when my father introduced his emerald. I mean, they saw when Mickey Moto came out with his cultured pearl in 1910 or 1915. I mean, it totally turned off the natural pearl industry, and there was a lot more behind it than just price, though. It was availability. So the problem with cultured pearls was it made the product much more available. It was a lot cheaper than the natural. The natural pearl industry got extremely expensive, and because of the pollution in the Persian Gulf, where most of the natural pearls were coming from, there was dwindling supplies. I mean, it got so expensive that the Cartier building on Fifth Avenue was traded for 2 strands of natural pearls. So that that just couldn't continue, and the cultured pearl definitely decimated the natural pearl industry for some time to come. So that's what the industry is afraid of. They don't want to see that same thing happen again. But it's not the same in natural emerald, ruby, sapphire. There's plenty of product out there. There's plenty of diamonds out there. We just got to go down our own paths, and we just totally ignore the natural industry. We don't throw rocks at them. They don't pick on me anymore. They have their customers. Their prices have never been higher. They're successful. We're successful. The only time I have compared prices is in some of my advertising in years gone by. I said, how many customers do you have for a $40,000 emerald? You can buy a Chatham for $400. And so that kind of comparison. I mean, we have different customers. And some people want, the natural stone because of what it is, how unique it is. And we are satisfying a need for the beauty of emerald at an affordable price, and there's a lot of people that's fine with them, and there are some people that would never touch it. Well, that's fine with me, So we don't want to see anything happen to the natural market, though.
Okay, maybe you've received this question before about other applications for what you're doing, or are you focusing only on jewelry and there are no other plans for other applications in future as well?
Yes, many people have asked us this question over the years, and companies that have tried to buy us out have asked my father, what are the other applications for what you're doing? Because before computerization took place, people sort of understood that crystals have a certain property. Each different compound, it reacts a little bit different electronically. And as a matter of fact, one of the companies that we almost sold out to back in the 1980s or 70s asked my father, what can you grow? And my father said, that's a stupid question. The periodic chart has over 100 elements on it. And the permutations and combinations of those elements is in the millions. So there's no way I can answer your question. And we didn't realize that it wasn't so stupid after all, a question, because that's when materials research started to happen down in Silicon Valley, close by me, where they grew crystals and then found out what the properties of that crystal was, what it could do. And it was only through that very expensive, time-consuming research that many companies invest in collectively to try and find the next, gallium arsenide or silicon wafer disk that computerization is based on. And that's, crystal growth. But we have never looked outside the jewelry industry. We've supplied crystals.
On the surface of Mars, in the lunar lander, are your emeralds. Tell the viewers and listeners a little bit about it.
Our emeralds are right now on the surface of Mars in that lunar lander. They came to us. They needed it for the spectrophotometer, and they needed the purity of our emerald. No contaminants, and it made a window that the spectrophotometer reads the elements that are coming in off the light waves from the Earth that it's looking at, and they wanted to buy crystal. They said, no. For people like you, no charge, and we always contribute to these efforts. But that's as close as we get. And I asked them, I said, well, can you put my name on the back of the little dune buggy? And they said, no, we don't do anything commercial in that way. But I did take a picture, but they sent me a picture of the lunar lander, and then I put Chatham on the back of it, and I used it in some of my talks. But I did correct it. I said, they did not put my name on there. Uh, so we contribute freely to scientific research, but we are not interested in it. The jewelry industry is unique, and as unique as the electronics industry. We can't be everything to everyone, and we don't go there.
Your concluding remarks about the book.
They can see, some of the write-ups on the book on LinkedIn under, Tom Chatham. It'll pop up. It's on Facebook. There's some reviews out there, and there's more reviews coming that I'll post. Everybody seems to enjoy the book. Bill Boyajian is in the middle of reading the book, and he says he really loves it, which made me happy. He and I go way back. He's the ex-president of Gemological Institute of America. And, unfortunately, it's very expensive to ship the book to India or the UK or other places like that, but I can't help that. But the book costs $90 plus the shipping cost. We can get it to most places in the world by FedEx for about $40. I realize it's expensive mail, but I can't help it. Or you can fly to San Francisco and then there'll be no postage.
Tell us about your expansion plans into India, specifically Jaipur and its history with your father.
We are expanding into India right now. China is acting up, and as we've had happen in other countries, it's getting expensive in China. And so we are right now in the experimental stage in Jaipur. And ironically, that was the first city my father sold crystals into worldwide. Back in 1946, we had a customer in Jaipur. So, no longer, but so you have a lot of history of cutting and trading in colored gemstones in India, and that's what we look for, is that expertise. So that's what we're doing now.
Fabulous! Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. All the very best with your book. Continue to help and inspire more people. Take care.
Thank you for asking. Glad to be with you. I'm glad we could make this work.